Test, test.
Test, test.
Whatever it may be.
All right, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us this evening. Today is January 9th, 2024. This is a public meeting of the Salt Lake City School District Board of Education. We do have the need for a closed session, and I would entertain a motion to enter closed session for character and competence.
I move that the board on January 9th, 2024, go into closed executive session to discuss the character, professional competence, or physical or mental health of an individual.
A second.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the table. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote, starting with Vice President Williams.
Bryce Williams, yes.
Jenny Sika, yes.
Ashley Anderson, yes.
Nate Salazar, yes.
Mohammed, yes.
Ryan Jensen, yes.
Excellent. That motion passes. We'll go ahead and move to room T206 to have our closed session. Thank you. Thank you for joining us this evening and for your patience while we work through some technical components to make sure that we were able to live stream and have an effective board meeting. Today is January 9th, 2024. Thank you again for your patience in our late start, getting back from our closed session and also getting this meeting started effectively. We will start with a brief welcome. So I definitely want to welcome all of you and thank you for joining us. I also want to recognize our association presidents. For buildings and grounds, we have President Elia Ocampo. For the Salt Lake Education Office and Personnel Association, SLEOPA, President Whitney Favre. Child Nutrition, President Tanya Slaughter. For transportation, we have President Chris Krogh. For the Salt Lake Education Association, our Teachers Association, we have President James Tobler and Vice President Mike Harmon. I don't see them here yet today. And for SLASA, the Salt Lake Association of School Administrators, President Brie De Leon, and it looks like the entire executive board. Thank you for joining us, principals, and for all the work that you do in our schools and for our communities. We will move over to the Pledge of Allegiance. Vice President Williams will lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Vice President Williams, for leading us in the pledge. Next, we have the consent agenda. I'm willing to entertain a motion regarding the consent agenda.
I move that we accept the consent agenda as dictated in today's agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on the table. Is there any discussion to the motion? Seeing none, we'll have a roll call vote starting with Board Member Sika.
Jenny Sika, yes.
Ashley Anderson, yes.
Nate Salazar, yes.
Mohammed, yes.
Ryan Jensen, yes.
Christy Sweat, yes.
Bryce Williams, yes.
All right, that motion passes. Thank you, Board. Now we will move on to our request to speak. We do have 5 speakers joining us tonight. Before we get started with that, the Board has asked me to read some guidelines regarding our public comment. The Board enjoys the opportunity to hear from the public during the comment portion of its meetings. Before we begin, I would like to take a moment to remind you of our Board rules governing your comments. The total time is reserved for public comment is not to exceed 15 minutes, with all speakers or groups limited to 3 minutes. The Board will not allow public comments during board meetings that are slanderous, obscene, or otherwise violate state or federal law. Employees and/or their representatives may not use the public comment period to address issues that should be raised through existing formal communication channels or established grievance or negotiations procedures. I'd also like to explain that unless the speaker's topic is already on the agenda, state law prohibits the Board from taking action on items raised during the public comment period. However, if it seems appropriate to the circumstances, I may direct district staff to follow up with the speaker on the topic discussed. Okay, our first speaker this evening is Troy Davis.
Hi, thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. We acknowledge schools need to close due to various factors, and I'm not here to advocate just for Hawthorne. I'm here to advocate for a more open process with early community input in the difficult task of closing schools. We understand this process was inherited by Dr. Grant from past leadership, and she can fix it if you give her the green light to do so. The community and I express gratitude to the legislators who recently reached out to President Salazar and the board's liaison to say, despite the rumors, we are not pressuring you to vote tonight. And in the legislative audit, dollars are mentioned in that audit 56 times. In the plan up for vote tonight, dollars are mentioned only a few times in the context of building and transportation costs. You are stewards of our tax dollars. It would be negligent to vote yes or no on something this profound without an in-depth cost analysis attached to it, even if finances were not considered in the school closure process. The district yesterday came to the conclusion the board was technically informed about milestone G5 date changes. After reading all correspondence carefully, I disagree, and if I were a board member, I would not feel informed appropriately. And missing those dates had an impact. The district had to even issue an apology to the board after community members found glaring mistakes in the data used to get to where we are today. To get on this closure list, each school was given one score. The unnamed members of the BOC split into 4 teams to score all 27 schools, using that sometimes incorrect data. Scores were then averaged into one final number. The scores were appropriately questioned by Board Member Anderson, and Ms. Kindle replied that it's an average of 4 numbers, but did not share the algorithm used to build the 4-team scores. The Salt Lake Association of School Administrators, or SLASA, communicated early on, quote, transparency and consistency with the algorithm for how school closings will be decided on are paramount, end quote. Using grammar records and public data, we were unable to find the algorithm used. Most importantly, Dr. Grant emailed her cabinet and asked an excellent question in September, quote, regarding school closures, should we or could we do it differently at this point? We've taken it on the chin with coverage and concerns about the school closure process. There is truth in these that we need to pay attention to, end quote. Knowing all this, what now? Don't vote yes or no on this plan tonight. Instead, I respectfully request the board make a motion to table the initial recommendations. Please second the motion to table and the board vote in favor of tabling this issue tonight. Retain the volume of work from the BOC and give this plan to Dr. Grant for her to set the gold standard for school closure processes and build a foundation of trust between the district and the community. G5 requires this to start no later than the end of February 2024. It's absolutely worth one more year to get it right. This is too big to accept this one as is and then vow to do better next time. Thank you for your time.
Troy. Before I ask our next speaker to join us, I do want to remind folks who are here that we do have Spanish translation available. If that is a resource that you need, please see the back table in the middle of the auditorium there. Our next speaker is Nick Scow.
Thank you, members of the board. I'll try some other people's words tonight. On June 13th, the district's Brian Connolly sent this email to the Secret Boundary Options Committee asking them to, quote, please come to Thursday's meeting with your top 7 elementary schools that you think should be considered for closure. We're going to create 3 options, 5, 6, and 7 school options, end quote. Not only were there 3 options never presented, Mr. Connolly promised us all about that, but it's very clear that not all these schools were evaluated objectively and fairly as claimed. The district's recommendations stand upon a subjective foundation built by a clandestine group of insiders. September 18th, Dr. Grant sent this email to her cabinet, which Troy just read. First, regarding school closure, should we do things differently? There's truth in these statements we need to pay attention to. While I appreciate Dr. Grant apparently trying to improve this botched process, months later, the process remains fatally flawed, and doesn't she deserve a chance to lead such an important process from the start and do it right? September 13th, Salt Lake Tribune article by Andy Larson highlighted all the things the district is doing wrong, saying, among other things, that, quote, I'm frustrated because as I read these pages and pages of comments from parents, grandparents, brothers, sisters, even occasionally elementary school kids themselves, I feel the vast majority of their concerns could have been avoided. Most of the comments are pretty reasonable. Parents want to know what's happening. So clearly the district's recommendations are not supported by reliable data, and numerous concerns from parents have not been addressed. My 10-year-old daughter asked me this morning why her school was closing, and I didn't know what to tell her because the district has not based their decision on reliable facts. December 22, the legislative auditor said, quote, the district should focus on identifying high-performing teachers in schools and replicating their successful policies with other teachers in schools where needed. Clearly, the board feels the pressure from the legislature to do something. But arbitrarily including a blue ribbon school like Hawthorne on the list goes directly against a number of auditors' recommendations. Several legislators have told me they'd rather see the district get it right than to hurry. And as someone who's been involved in numerous legislative audits, I cannot think of a single other agency that has made such drastic and uninformed moves in the wake of a scathing audit. Yet here we are, still barreling ahead. Please vote tonight to table this matter so that we can all take a breath. You won't have to make an unsupported generationally significant decision, and parents won't have to feel like we were swindled. Tabling would give you a chance to get this right and show the kind of thoughtfulness and oversight that we appreciate and expect from each of you elected board members. We're counting on you. Thank you.
Next to speak, we have Rosemary Winters.
Hi, my name is Rosemary Winters. My son's a student at Hawthorne Elementary. I'm worried we're coming to you at the 11th hour. I've been waiting and watching the process with hope, hoping that we'd come to a sensible solution about our schools. I've been keeping an open mind, looking for a comprehensive and data-driven plan. But I don't believe that's what is before you tonight. The initial list of 7 schools was created in secret. None of us, including you board members, know who was on the committee or how they evaluated and prioritized what schools to consider for closure. Failing to consider whether you can close adjacent schools at the same time was a huge misstep. And it was not until November that we learned our district will not move special ed hubs, adding to its ever-changing list of criteria for school closures. If our vision, values, and criteria had been clear from the start, Emerson never would have been on that study list. And as a parent, it's bewildering to see Hawthorne recommended for closure, a school that has the 2nd lowest cost per student, 4th highest test scores, and 5% more neighborhood enrollment this year than last. We should be replicating and expanding the success at Hawthorne instead of erasing it. Closing multiple elementary schools is a once-in-a-generation decision, hopefully. Are you confident that we're getting this right? Are these the correct schools? Will this be enough schools? I know there's a feeling that this school closure can has been kicked down the road too long and it's time to act. But this is the kind of decision it's more important to get right than to get done fast. We all want Salt Lake City District to be the flagship in our state. Let's transform this process into one that builds up our elementary schools instead of tearing them down. Let's make the process transparent from start to finish and consistent by empowering our new, very capable superintendent to start fresh. At the same time, we are thinking of what schools to close. We should also be looking at what schools are remaining open. How will their boundaries change? How can we make these schools even stronger by incorporating the programs, staff, and traditions of closing schools? You've received a lot of publicity this year over the closure process. What would it look like to spend a year talking about how to have all of our students attend a high-quality, right-sized elementary in walking distance with equal access to special programs throughout this city? We could be raising awareness and inviting all parents within the district to participate and learn about their neighborhood schools, welcoming them back into schools instead of driving them away. Please put aside these initial recommendations, fix the closure process, and start again. I know that's difficult, but I believe it will be worth it. Thank you.
Next to speak is Malika Filtz.
Thank you, board members and Dr. Grant, for this opportunity to speak. My name is Malika Filtz, and I'm a concerned mom of 2 children at Hawthorne Elementary. My request tonight is that you vote no, or at least vote to table this decision on the current proposed school closure plan. It has been stated by many others how a lack of transparency and inconsistencies with the process have led to a corrosion of trust by the public towards the school board and the district as a whole. It appears as though the district's chosen path will lead to a greater lack of diversity and an increased east-west divide within the district. As a transplant to Salt Lake City from the East Coast, I was very concerned about the lack of diversity within Utah and how that would affect my children. However, I was pleasantly surprised by how diverse Hawthorne is and the fact that my children were able to make friends from many different cultures and backgrounds. It's unclear to me whether this will still be the case moving forward if these 4 schools close. In addition, there has been a very clear lack of communication and direction regarding what will happen to our children if these schools are closed. While we understand that hard decisions have to be made, and that might include closing schools, the fact that all the parents I know are struggling to understand their options in order to make the best decision for their children is making this already difficult process even more difficult. Closing a school makes such a huge impact on the community that it seems only right to take the time necessary to have very concrete plans in place before implementing any actual changes. For instance, my son is one of only a few members of his current class that would be separated from his friends under the revised boundary changes. We have been told that it's up to the principals to decide who to accept via open enrollment, but will those principals be given extra resources in order to help our children stay together? Will children from closing schools be given priority? Nothing has been communicated to parents regarding these important decisions. I respectfully request you vote no or vote to table the current proposal and take some additional time to ensure that there is more transparency in the process and work on achieving more community support. Thank you.
Our final speaker this evening is Jessica Hinty.
Hello, and thank you for saying my last name correctly.
You're welcome.
I want to thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the board, for giving us the opportunity to address you. When purchasing a home, usually the first question on a family's mind after the cost of the home would be, what are the schools like? And I can guarantee you that those of us in the Hawthorne boundary definitely took Hawthorne Elementary into consideration when purchasing our homes. And while I know that for any school community, shuttering their school would be painful, I feel it is important to point out, in addition to the flawed process that has led to us to this point, why the closure of Hawthorne Elementary feels unjustifiable. I'm the mother of an 11, a 7, and a 20-month-old. We are looking at another 10 years of elementary education in our home. We have lived in our home for 9 years with no plans to move. Over the years, I have had some complaints about our schools, mostly administrative. And when voicing those complaints outside of our school community, I've often been met with, just change schools. But I have felt, and my family have felt, stalwart and strongly that we should be in our community school. We have stayed, and my children have flourished, and they have received an outstanding education. After all, Hawthorne is the 4th-ranked highest district in the district for testing. And having our school right around the corner has been a big blessing for us as well. In selecting Hawthorne for closure, only one reason was given, which is its proximity to 700 East, which is ironically where it has resided for the past 100 years. To be given this one reason that doesn't feel like a real reason, and then to be assigned the school of Whittier Elementary feels inequitable in the least. Now let me speak to this for a moment. Whittier has been residing on the TSI list for a while and is burgeoning on a breakthrough with their, what I hear, amazing principal. But the likelihood of the additional 100+ students, I would estimate, and the fact that Whittier is already around 500 students, leads me to believe that the situation would become more difficult for that school to get out of the situation they're in, and probably at the cost of my children's education. It's a tough pill to swallow. How this is an equitable decision, I do not believe it is. So I would just really want to encourage that the board please table or reconsider this process. It has not been given the due process to also take into consideration the schools that will be receiving the population of the closed schools and what that will do to those schools. It's not a fair decision both for the Hawthorne community as well as for the Whittier community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jessica. That concludes our public comment request to speak period of the agenda. Before we move into the discussion agenda, for those following along at home or in person with our agenda tonight, I do want to let you know that under the reports section, the USBA presentation on school board and board leadership evaluation process is being postponed due to our presenter, Richard Stoll, not being able to be here this evening. So with that, Superintendent, the floor is yours to introduce our discussion agenda topic, the recommendation on long-term school closures and boundary adjustments.
Thank you. I would like to start
by honoring our parents. We may disagree on where we land on this and how we see this decision and the process, as well as what may be best for our district. But in that disagreement, there has been a remarkable sense of support for your schools and your teachers. That makes this decision even harder. If you were disappointed with the schools on the list, it would be easier to consider them. I want you to know how much I respect the time and attention you have given this and the advocacy, even again as I argue in a different direction. We are in the district going to be implementing the Dignity Index. That index ranks speech that we have with each other in the public sphere, in this public square that we have right now, where all of us are coming together trying to make terribly difficult decisions in the public world. In the outside community, contempt is present. What we just witnessed tonight with the disagreement and frustration and pain that parents are feeling was a remarkable level of dignity. In your communication, in your expressions of frustration and disagreement, I just want to say thank you for that, and to recognize what that takes to get to that point. It is what I will be asking all of our community to reach that point, that we can hit that level of disagreement. I know that's not always present in all of our conversations, and I'm sure there has been tremendous frustration on your part as the district is recommending a move in a different direction than you would prefer. But I just want to honor that tonight before moving into some remarks about our recommendation. We are here because our student population has declined. We have more schools now than we need, and that are useful to support our academic program. Enrollment is declining in school districts across the country. Just this morning, there was an article in the Education Week newspaper, which is the national newspaper for education issues, that remarked that schools from California to New York, districts from California to New York, are facing this problem of dropping student enrollment. Boston is looking at closing half of its schools over the next years. Rochester, New York, just closed 11 of 45 schools. San Antonio just closed 15 schools. Alpine District here just closed 3 schools and is looking at more. Granite District just closed 1 and closed 3 last year, and they are looking at more next year. 40,000 students we are expected to lose in the state of Utah over the next 10 years because of declining birth rates, because families may opt for other education options, and in our case, because of a tremendous move from the urban to suburban districts that was hastened by the pandemic. Every demographic analysis that we have at hand has shown that our district enrollment is declining in every neighborhood over time. It is expected to continue that to decline. To have more schools than we need is not good for student learning, is not good for teacher collaboration, and is not good for providing the full supports to our students. It is also not financially sound. I want to respond to just a couple of points of misinformation that I believe are in a lot of the public conversation right now. And if I may, to take just a moment to respond to the email that I sent in September. You are right that I wanted to look again at the process, particularly our communication and interaction with our communities. It was not up to what I expect, nor was the presentation of all of our data, which was clearer over time. We have carefully and fully followed the G5 policy, which is the board's policy on school closure and boundary adjustments. Each of the 7 schools considered were a viable option for closure. The Boundary Options Committee, despite the presentation of information through grandma requests, the work they did was thoughtful, deliberative, and careful in presenting 7 schools to consider. There was no preconceived idea of which schools to close before the process began. We also will need to continue to look at school closure in our district. This will come up again. That said, it is a hard and consequential decision. It's a very big decision to make. I think our parents have expressed well what this means to them. With that, our school communities understand what needs to be done. We have the support of our administrative team in the district. We have the recognition by our teacher association that we have to attend to these things. And our school communities are there to support that. I want to make one slight change to the boundary options in that I wanted to raise and let you know and to let the public know, we are moving forward with the boundary options as presented. They have not changed. We boundaried in the block that holds the YWCA into the school, into Liberty Elementary, particularly because of their CLC that's residing there. In further conversations with Mike Harmon, who leads our work on the McKinney-Bento homelessness, in further conversations with the director of the YWCA homeless shelter and with our principals and our district leaders, we have decided to create an MOU with the YWCA so that we can best serve them over time in perhaps some different arrangements than that. So the boundaries will remain, that the YWCA is there, but we can work with their team to figure out some best ways to serve their students that probably will look at a number of different school options to do that, and we will confirm that MOU by March so that all of the families that are in that setting and those that may be there transitioning from that shelter there will be clear about their schools, and we can set up the supports that we need to support them. Uh-oh, some snow is coming. Okay.
So it's warning until 7.
It's coming at 7, thank you. This is about moving forward as a district. I want you to know, board, that I am certain that this proposal is in the long-term health and well-being of our district and all of our students. Change is hard, even good change, but change has to always be welcome, and it's necessary. With that, I'd like to just go through quickly, again, the recommendations of the district. The elementary schools recommended for closure, for permanent closure, beginning in the 24-25 school year, so they would close at the end of the 23-24 school year, are Hawthorne Elementary, M. Lynn Benyon Elementary, Mary W. Jackson Elementary, and Riley Elementary. With that, the district also recommends adjusting 14 elementary school boundaries as listed on this slide and as detailed in our rationale document. This is important to know. This recommendation is about the changes to these boundaries as detailed in that document, which lists the streets for each of these boundaries that we are presenting, as well as the maps that are posted on the district website that represent that. So that each of these schools would have a changed boundary should the board choose to vote for these recommendations. They are Backman, Edison, Emerson, Ensign, Franklin, Liberty, Mountain View, Newman, Parkview, Rose Park, Uinta, Wasatch, Washington, and Whittier. This then would be the map of the school district with the proposed new elementary school boundaries. I want to remind particularly parents, and I think this is really important, that should we close schools, there are enrollment options. Utah is an open enrollment state. Students may continue to attend the school they are attending this school year if it was their neighborhood boundary school and it remains open. Families may continue to use the open enrollment process to attend a district school that is not their neighborhood school. And we are putting together a special open enrollment process that will extend for those families who may be impacted. And the district will honor current open enrollment permits if the school remains open. Also, it is my responsibility as superintendent that if we close schools, that the transition supports our families and students and our staff. With that, these next months would be dedicated to the process of supporting a smooth transition. We have, as it says, the timeline of transitioning to new schools in the fall 2024, establishing an open enrollment period that for families that would be impacted. We commit to communicating early and often about these transition needs and supporting families and students in the transition, including the social emotional support. We also are committed to creating new communities. Our principals have already started thinking about what it would mean if this happens to create new communities, to welcome new students and new families into different settings than they are currently attending, and that it would not be a process of welcoming into what is there, but actually creating a different school, a new school for them should schools close. Finally, board, I want to thank you for your engagement through this process, for the hours that you have spent with community members in responding to their concerns, in attending community meetings, in reading the many, many pages of comments that we have received from the community. And the cabinet and I are prepared to answer any questions you may have as we move into a discussion.
Thank you, Superintendent, for your presentation and your kind remarks. Being that this is on the discussion agenda, I will open it up for any discussion points or topics from the board.
I think the weather is trying to tell us something. Just table it. Okay. If I may just, add my input to this. It has been a very painful and lengthy process to decide on what schools to close. Are we declining in terms of population? Absolutely. Do we need to close schools? Absolutely. Is this the right time to do it? I think we could wait a bit. The reason I say so, really, the reason I say so is because just look at the timeline of where we are right now. Here, I'm thinking here as little kid going to school. We just went through COVID, and there has been a slow progress of readjusting of coming back to the classroom. And not only that, also the adjustment of the teachers and the staff and everyone to come back to the classrooms. And the families finally, adjusting to almost normal life. And then we come and we introduce the idea of it is time for us to close schools. And we just heard from one of the speakers that there's not going to be any pressure from legislators, and that is fantastic to know. So it really has been hard to, walk outside of my house or work and just, multiple times I was stopped by little kids. I'm a grown-up man. But to be stopped by a little kid and be asked a question, these are kids who are just playing in the street without any of their parents. The kids are smart now. And for me to be able to provide them some rational answer is really hard, If I cannot explain it to the little kid, how can I go ahead and explain it to those who are even grown-ups? So, superintendent, business administrator, district administrators, everyone, you all have done an outstanding job in supplying the information that you have. Nevertheless, we could do better. That way, the information we put out are information clean and clear from any mistakes. The moment the public sees one little mistake in any data or information we put out, then we are exposing ourselves to the public commenting that we do not know what we are doing. And to the public out here, let me tell you something about the district for the few years that I've been here. The district, everyone that I have worked with, everyone that I talked to, everyone that I associated to, their focus is always on our kids. And that I promise you because I know, And so, is my time out? Yeah? Okay. So I'll finish my talk after.
Thank you, Board Member Bade. Board Member Jensen.
When I joined the Salt Lake City School Board last January, the process had already begun to study the potential of elementary schools and school boundary changes. Prior to my becoming a board member, the State Auditor's Office had completed an audit of the Salt Lake City School District and had recommended that elementary schools needed to be closed. Recognizing an irresponsible use of taxpayer money and stating that taxpayers can't be expected to pay for schools with enrollment at half of school capacity. Arguments can be made as to how the district respond to this directive, but the district was tasked with looking at elementary schools and considering potential closure. For the past year, I have participated in a process that had been initiated prior to my joining the board. I have actively listened to district administration, parents, the school community, Salt Lake City community members at large, the media, televised, print, and social media. I have read the emails sent. That's a lot of reading. I have read the reports and documents provided by the district and our city's newspaper, along with their editorials. I have sought to understand the issue as completely as I could. These decisions are incredibly difficult. No one wants to close a school. And yes, I understand that a school is more. It is a community. It is a refuge. I taught in a Title I school for 11 years, Newman Elementary, one of the 7 schools studied for potential closure. I know firsthand what goes on in a school, the educating of children, addressing their social and emotional needs, supporting their physical needs. I've participated in after-school programs and many other programs that are provided through our community, whether it be city, neighborhood, civic clubs, or state. Would I choose to close Newman or any other school? No. I think I understand the implications to the students and the community as well as anyone else. I appreciate the work done by Superintendent Martin Bates, a school superintendent with over 20 years of experience in administering a large school district, faced with school closure challenges. In May of last year, the school board announced the appointment of Elizabeth Grant as our new superintendent. I can attest that as a board, we worked very hard to find a superintendent that could lead our district into a bright and promising future. Many members of our community have individually voiced to me their confidence in leadership, in her leadership, and their appreciation for her work. I appreciate her diligence and hard work in taking on this very difficult task when she began her tenure at the beginning of July. I appreciate the work performed by her administrative team in diligently considering the factors outlined in board policy and procedure G5. Have there been some missteps? Yes. Are these understandable? Yes. It has been over 20 years since the school has been closed in the district, a hiatus unprecedented in our district's history. I believe the district is diligently going through this process with the utmost care to our students, parents, teachers, and everyone involved. It is important to understand that there are voices from these proposed school communities asking that we move forward with this process. I have heard from many of you here.
That's time.
Board Member Anderson.
Throughout this process, I've used our meetings to share misgivings and ask questions about the study and recommendations ultimately put before us. And I'm appreciative of Dr. Bates, Dr. Grant, and the cabinet who've answered my questions and committed to ongoing evaluations of boundaries and programs. Tonight is really the culmination of what has been a year-long discussion. And this has never been about giving anyone a victory or making a specific constituency happy. It's about moving closer to a place where all district students have the resources they need in well-funded buildings with sufficiently sized staffs. My 2 kids have been in under-capacity elementary schools for all 9 years they've been in school. In fact, all but 2 of our elementary schools operate under capacity, many substantially so. While my kids have enjoyed wonderful communities, a lack of FTE has caused faculty attrition, annual changes to programs, unsustainable class sizes, and increased behavioral disruption. As a board member, I receive complaints from parents about many things happening in their schools or about their physical school buildings, even and especially when a family loves and values their school and wants it to be better. The root of these issues is often that our elementary schools are thousands of students under capacity, yet it's a topic we as a board have relatively few tools to address. The school board does not choose city demographics. Birth rate and development are not in our control. We do not choose the faculty to student funding ratio. That's the legislature. We too do not choose how we are reimbursed for transportation or how we are funded based on average daily membership rather than absolute numbers of students. Our district is doing a lot of good work, and we should tell that story. That said, if we were to bring every single Salt Lake City private school student into our district, even those residing outside our boundaries, we would still scarcely reach our 2014 enrollment numbers. Research from Philadelphia additionally shows that marketing campaigns for urban schools often shifts resources away from diverse and vulnerable students, pushing resources to a city's most affluent families. Unpacking these layers shows that urban school districts are multifaceted, and boundary studies aren't silver bullets, especially when they've been conducted decades apart. And when vulnerable students are impacted by our decisions not to close schools in the past, they will face change either way the vote goes tonight. Tonight's recommendations from the superintendent are a brave step to get closer to what thousands of elementary students need: more classes per grade level cohort in well-funded buildings with comprehensive staffing. These steps are grounded in the math of the situation and in a consensus of educational research about educator efficacy and student behavior. This is a tough decision that's necessitated now by the urgent educational needs of young people. Inaction today would have greater negative consequences than the actions we are being asked to take.
Thank you, Board Member Anderson. Board Members Sika, Sweat, or Williams? Vice President Williams.
So I'm here before you tonight as one of 7 individuals who will vote on the proposed closure of Benyon, Hawthorne, Mary W. Jackson, and Riley elementary schools. The decision the board makes tonight is not a decision to be taken lightly, nor is it an easy one to take. We all know that no one wants to see their neighborhood school close, and we know that demographics are changing, and the number of students we are seeing in Salt Lake City School District is decreasing. I recognize why this conversation has started around closure and why in the long term it would need to happen. However, there are a number of reasons why I also believe this is not the move we should be making tonight. First is transparency. Transparency is the key to good governance. Unfortunately, we have heard from our community they did not feel transparency was always present in this process. Transparency must be present when decisions that impact the future of our children are being made. Now, while I believe there was careful effort to be transparent, I'm hearing that families are not seeing transparency, and we must lean into this. If we cannot get buy-in from our community around transparency, that gives me great concern making a decision like this tonight. Second, as a representative elected to voice the concerns and aspirations of my constituents, I must hear their call. Over many months, and specifically in the last couple of weeks, I have engaged with many of you. There's been a resounding desire for me to oppose these recommended closures. Your voices are not just important, but they are integral to the decision-making process. And lastly, I wasn't going to go here, but I feel like I need to. Lastly, and most importantly to me, is that my decision is deeply influenced by concerns of equity, particularly for West Side neighborhoods. The area that I represent is historically underserved and faces unique challenges. The barriers that I'm hearing and unique challenges are not just what I'm hearing about, but these are challenges that I have lived through myself. Closing the schools in this area of the city would exacerbate existing inequities, and we as West Side residents deal with these on a daily basis. Education is a powerful tool for social change, and there are factors as West Side residents that we consider differently than others. I worry about what closure would do to my geographic community. We need to look at these closures more closely and how we can support the unique needs of different and diverse neighborhoods in our district. While my vote tonight will likely be a no, and I just totally clicked out of it. While my vote likely tonight will be a no, I do want to recognize the work of Dr. Grant, the cabinet, various district folks, parents, community members who've been here to share their concerns with us. And I will leave it at that. I'm sorry I clicked out of it, but that's just what I wanted to share. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice President Williams. Board Member Sweat.
Thank you, President Salazar. Like our other board members, I would like to echo my grateful thankfulness for our superintendent and for the staff for the recommendations they put forward. Over the past year, the idea of right-sizing our schools has been a driving force of 2 superintendents in the Boundary Options Committee. The ideal size for an elementary school depends on various factors. Missing from the conversation over these many months is the option of investing in small schools with reduced classroom sizes. Research shows that small class sizes create a supportive and inclusive environment that contributes to students' social and emotional well-being, increased student engagement, improved academic performance, and stronger teacher-student relationships. Building trust and maintaining transparent process during difficult times are crucial for several reasons. Trust forms the foundation of effective communication and collaboration. In challenging situations, people look for stability and reassurance, and trust fosters a sense of reliability in decision-making. Transparent processes and policies provide clarity, helping individuals understand the reasoning behind difficult decisions. This transparency minimizes uncertainty and reduces the likelihood of rumors or misinformation, which can be detrimental during the challenging times. When people perceive transparency and trust in decision-making, they are more likely to accept and support difficult choices, even if they are challenging to our families and communities. Overall, trust and transparency contribute significantly to organizational resilience and the ability to navigate difficulties effectively. Transparency and accountability are keys to rebuilding trust and maintaining credibility in the eyes of our families and community. When mistakes are made in data and communication, it's important to acknowledge the error openly and take responsibility. Policy should provide a framework for consistent and fair decision-making within the school district and ultimately contributes to the overall effectiveness, integrity, and reputation of the school district. The recommendation to close 4 elementary schools will impact those neighborhoods and families for many years to come, as I know from a personal experience. It's unfortunate there is erosion of trust which needs to be addressed and repaired by this board and administration. No matter the outcome tonight with the vote, I will conduct myself as I always have in the past, to support the decision, but to keep a watchful eye and expect transparency, accountability, and integrity in our future decision-making processes.
Thank you, Board Member Sweat. Board Member Sika, do you have any discussion points for this evening?
As the rest of my colleagues, I've written a few remarks on my laptop. And I feel impressed not to share it. But what I do feel impressed to share is that excellence and equity for every student. I as well, as the rest of my colleagues, have read emails. And ultimately, it comes down to excellence and equity for every student. Is this the best decision for the student? Nobody here on this table wants to vote no. Nobody here on this table wants to vote yes. Nobody here on this table wants to close the school because it has to do with our kids. I have 5 kids in the district that are, I have 8 kids who went through the district. 5 are remaining. And I cannot help to look at this committee that was put together by Superintendent Bates, that any one of them would demise a plan to falter any of these students in our district. I look into each of their eyes. I've affiliated and, associated with each and every one of them, and I cannot come to a conclusion that they were not transparent, that they were not. My conclusion is that they're human, and we're human, and we're on an expected platform up here, which we will never, ever, 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 ever reach. But what I do know is that their intent is good. Their heart is good, just as everyone here in this room. So I refer back to excellence and equity to every student. And I feel that they've done that process. I trust Elizabeth, Dr. Grant, and her committee. Yeah, did they slip up here and there? I guarantee you, if I was part of this committee, I'd be a slip up too. I ain't perfect. Neither are any of us, any of you. But I truly feel in my heart of hearts that they had the right intent for equity and excellence to every student.
That's time.
Thank you, Board Member Sika. I'll also go take the privilege to speak and utilize my time this evening. Maybe not all 3 minutes. I tend to be somewhat brief, but nonetheless, I'm actually holding in my hand something that I held up to this room, well, not this room, but our room in the district office. And it's just a little sign that I keep in front of me that says, "Remember the goal." The thing I got to laugh about, my mom's probably going to be mad at me, is there's actually her notes when she was hanging out in my house while her bathroom was being remodeled throughout the course of this year, which I think illustrates to you all how much this process, this work, that binder that Brian pointed out to you all this evening has been at the forefront of my mind and been at the forefront of all of our colleagues, all of my colleagues here around this board table. I've tried for years, 5 now, going on 6, to keep students at the heart and at the center of every single decision, action, vote that I have taken. Similar to Jenny, I'm not perfect either. All of you are aware of that, I know. But for us and for me, that goal has always been to create better opportunities for our students in this school district. I'll be the first to say that our school district isn't perfect either. A sharp look at the gaps between the demographics, between the geographics of where our students live and how they identify in this district aren't where they need to be, aren't where they should be, and they aren't where they ought to be. And the way I have determined to define the goal for myself is centering students at the heart of this decision and making sure that whatever decision is taken tonight, that they are paramount, that they are at the forefront of making sure that their opportunities, that the distribution of resources, that the environments in which they exist in are the same for all of our students, regardless of where they live and regardless of where their school is. And so that's remember the goal. And to me, that goal was making sure that we do everything we can to right-size our schools, everything we can to provide the best and highest quality of environments for them. And I don't believe that we've shied away from that goal, regardless of our disagreements, regardless of the discussions that you're hearing this evening from board members or the presentations that you've heard from Superintendent Grant, Superintendent Bates, their respective cabinets. I trust the process. I believe that we have done what we need to do and that the cabinet and Boundaries Option Committee has done what they need to do to follow the G5 policy and the administrative procedures. And Superintendent, to you and to your team, I want to thank you for those efforts. I want to thank the parents, I want to thank the students for voicing your concerns and bringing those to me, to our board. And I believe that we are on the forefront of something very unique and special. I know that's my time, Bryce, so I will save mine for the next round, whatever else I have to say. Second round of comments, as you know, board, per our board guidelines governing discussion points, we have an additional 2 minutes each. If there's anything else that we would like to say before we move on to the action agenda. Board Member Bade, and then Board Member Jensen, and Board Member Anderson.
Okay. I forgot what I was left, you know. Dr. Grant gave me some, she said it's Dayquil. I hope it is, you know, but I'm feeling relaxed, so. Okay, scratch that from the records, please. All right, let's make some. I'm just trying to lighten up the mood over here a little bit. You know, the amazing part as I was listening over here that everyone's comment does involve and include students. And to me, you know, this is why we are here. And those who agree and those who disagree with the process, there is always students in the center of it. Personally, if I am building my house and I have a contractor that would come to my house and says, okay, we're going to fix this area for you. And I do not know who is this contractor. I've never met him. The only thing he came and gave me a bid and says, okay, I'm going to build this place for you. And for me, if I were to just get up and say, yes, let's go for it, then I am really going to be messing up so many things because I need to vet and know who is that person, what kind of work they do, who are they. So I'm going here to the 13 members of the committee who were placed in there. I do not know who they are. I have not met a single person of them. And if I am being trusted to make this massive decision that would change the structure of our district, that will just quickly, that will make a big change in the lives of so many kids, I want to know that those people who are coming with those lists for me, I want to get to know them well. I want to make sure to have a moment to ask them real questions, and then I will be able to vote confidently in making a decision. That's me.
Board Member Jensen?
Yes. I had just gotten to where I was going to refer to the Salt Lake City School District further study recommendations. This is located on the district homepage. You can click on that, and I just want to explain to you that I have spent a considerable amount of time looking at this and digesting it and really trying to understand their rationale for school closures and proposed boundaries. I think that they have demonstrated that they have followed the policy and the procedure. I also want to recognize that children are resilient. I have experienced this over and over in my 11 years of teaching children in an elementary school. I've also experienced it for 30 to 40 years as I've worked with my own children and grandchildren. Much of it depends on the attitude and the atmosphere that I present to my students or to my children. I am anxious to ensure that excellence in education is provided to all of our students in the Salt Lake City School District. Michael Lee, in an article in the Tribune News this past fall, said that the schools that were being studied were in technical limbo. Well, I look at this as if we don't make a decision now, we will be leaving all of our children in some sort of technical limbo. We have done this for over a year, asking them to be in another year of limbo. To me, I am not providing excellence in education.
Board Member Anderson?
Sure. I just wanted to reiterate my view that considering the full district, I think the choice not to act on school closure would continue equivalent harms for vulnerable student groups in under-enrolled schools. Our superintendent has repeatedly pointed out it is no longer possible to run an equitable school system when available funding is spread too thin across too many buildings. Each of us here regularly ways in which the status quo itself is inequitable, and so tonight to continue with the status quo, in my opinion, would be irresponsible and cement many of the harms that under-enrollment has caused students, not only in my personal experience as a parent and an educator, but in that broad educational literature. And I think we've learned that making a serious change would allow important programming to be more equitably distributed across our geography, including an ELP program on the west side, which I think is an important thing to highlight. As a board, I also want to remind everyone, we're not compelled only by the audit, but real educational needs in the 25 schools which do operate thousands of students under capacity. However, like Christy shared, I do think the most important takeaway as we move to the action agenda soon is that regardless of how the vote goes, all of us here are committed to an effective transition either to this plan and also to future boundary study, whatever that may look like.
Board Member Sweat.
I think what's important for our audience online and here tonight is to know that it's important for us to debate and disagree, and also to agree at times. And just because I might disagree with some of my colleagues doesn't mean that my focus isn't student-centered, because it is. It always has been, and it always will be. I think that, Dr. Grant, I would like to just take a moment of my time and ask you a question. It's been interesting, all of the, well, it's validating, actually, to have so many of our parents, our stakeholders say how glad they are that you are our superintendent. It has been validating for me as a board member, knowing that we made the right decision. And I think that one of the things that we heard multiple times tonight is, let's give it back to her. Let's let her, put her stamp on it. So my question to you at this time, to those people who really have that belief in you, is what would you do differently if it was handed back to you?
I would have started this job in January. I think there is no question that we have slipped at times in communication. I think we have slipped in times in the clarity of our presentation of data. I also want to say this, though. I was part of school closure when Lowell was closed 20 years ago. At that time, I was dismayed, as many of the people are in the audience, by that decision. I thought it unwise. That decision was largely based on neighborhood enrollment. Our decision has largely taken into account neighborhood enrollment, the age of buildings, as well as the other factors, but those have played a large part. We've talked about that. This idea that we want schools where children live. That, to me, is valuable. There is no exceptionally fair way to decide among schools. I've spent years thinking about this from the perspective of Lowell, and have been put in the hot seat in the last months and have tried to rethink how to do it. There are a few things that I would change in the policy. Certainly, I think 16 factors is complicated to take into account. I think we've all found that through this process, and some of those factors have less impact than others. We didn't find any federal statutes that had anything to do with school closure, so that factor was not one that we really took into consideration. There are districts across the country making these decisions to close schools. The districts in the state of Utah have tended to use the metric of school enrollment within a neighborhood boundary. Schools across the country have closed schools that they find inadequate. That's another way of closing schools. We have chosen not to do that. There is no perfect metric to use that does not put the burden on just a few people rather than all people across the district. It does land more heavily on some schools than others. And I have not yet found, in all of the time I have spent in thinking about it from 20 years ago to today, and with that ended up choosing similarly to some of the decisions that were made 20 years ago, despite my frustration at the time, because I did not find an alternative that could work well. So I believe that these schools are good schools that serve their community in multiple ways. But we are tasked with looking at the district as a whole and the population of our district as a whole. I sit as the superintendent of all students across the district, and to me it was important to move forward with this decision. And I did not find a different way at this moment to think about that. I think as we move forward, because we're going to have to close more schools over the next years. We look at that process, we talk with the community about what they want to have as the metrics, but I want the community to know I have not yet heard an alternative that is more fair, because it always lands harder on some people than others.
Thank
So
you.
with that, thanks for the opportunity to say all that.
I appreciate your honesty. I mean, that's obviously one of the reasons why we hired you, Liz, is because you come across with very genuine, and that's why our stakeholders and why our parents and our families, are resonating with you. I think one of the things that is important to me to say tonight is that whatever the decision is, that when we look at and we hear the statement, we're going to have to keep doing this, I hope that what we do instead is that we grab onto the tail of a star, and that we really are saying we're going to be the flagship, in this city, that we're going to look at CTE pathways, that we're going to market and publicize our schools. We're going to evaluate programs and look at the programs that we need to, that we're going to buoy up in every single elementary our after-school programs. Those are the things that will attract and bring families back into the city. That we also have a better partnership with our city when we're talking about what affordable family homes really look like in our city with rents. It's unfortunate that Hawthorne just happens to be an area where there's still affordable homes and rents. And so for me, that's one of the things that I will continue to do, for the next year that I sit in this seat, is to continue to push us to be that flagship that you want us to be, but we have to change the way that we've been doing things about our schools.
Thank you, Kristen.
Vice President Williams?
Yep, I just wanted to take a couple seconds of my 2 minutes. I'm not going to take the full time. One thing I didn't get to say in my first round, or at least I don't think I adequately said it in the first round, is the deep appreciation of Superintendent Grant and the cabinet and our teachers and our administrators. The one thing that I want to say and hope that we can all buy into as a district and as a community moving forward is that no matter what happens tonight, the way the vote goes, I hope we can all come together, move forward, and do what's best for kids in our district. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Board Member Sika, anything else you'd like to add?
Well, I think there's a misconception where we represent certain precincts and that's all we represent. But I would like to confirm and affirm today to the public, this is a global overall perspective that I'm coming to the table with. Our West Side children, we are disadvantaged in many, many ways. But this closure, how is it going to affect the whole district is what matters. And I truly, sincerely feel that I believe, I honestly believe that we have done our due diligence. The committee has done their due diligence to seek every single option out there. Despite Brian Conley's email, I'm just going to put him on blast just because. But I really sincerely feel all the hours put into this, and it was for the focus of the children in the Salt Lake City School District, not just Glendale or Poplar Grove or Rose Park. And that matters to me. It matters. My children will benefit affiliating from the East Side kids just as much as they'll, benefit from my children. This matters. We need to move forward for our kids to progress. That's all.
Board members. And the last thing that I just wanted to say that I ran out of time to say in the beginning is that I agree with a couple of my colleagues that to do nothing on this issue continues to persist the things that have always troubled me the most, which is making sure that students who look like me, that the experiences that I had in this school district, that it's different, that it's better. And I think that we would be doing a disservice not to move us forward into consolidating not only enrollments in our schools, but also providing, like I mentioned, those high-quality environments. Not that they're not happening, but they're also not happening right now either everywhere. And consolidation, bringing resources and targeting them more effectively with the staff capacities that we need to close those gaps is my goal tonight. And that's all I have to say about that. Thank you again to everybody. That concludes round 1 and 2 of the discussion agenda. Being that this is also on the action agenda, we do not need to seek a motion to move it to the action agenda. We will just move over to that right now. I do want to I want to let board members know that based on the significance of this vote tonight, that I will be calling on board members individually to make their vote as opposed to a roll call vote, just to make sure that we get that straight for our records. At this point, we are on the action agenda, and I would entertain a motion regarding the topic of recommendation on long-term school closures and boundary adjustments. Board Member Jensen.
I move that the board accept the district's recommendations related to school closure and boundary adjustments. Specifically, the board permanently close Hawthorne Elementary, M. Lynn Benyon Elementary, Mary W. Jackson Elementary, and Riley Elementary. Such closure to take effect at the start of the 2024-2025 school year. In addition, the board adjusts the boundaries for the following 14 elementary schools: Backman Elementary School, Edison Elementary School, Emerson Elementary School, Ensign Elementary School, Franklin Elementary School, Liberty Elementary School, Mountain View Elementary School, Elementary School, Parkview Elementary School, Rose Park Elementary School, Uinta Elementary School, Wasatch Elementary School, Washington Elementary School, Whittier Elementary School. These boundary adjustments shall be in effect beginning with the 2024-2025 school year.
We have a motion on the table. Is there a second to the motion?
I second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion to the motion? Seeing no further discussion, I will start the call on this one. Board Member Jensen.
Yes.
Board Member Anderson.
Yes.
Board Member Sika.
Yes.
Vice President Williams.
No.
Board Member Sweat.
No.
Board Member Bade.
No.
Nate Salazar, yes. That motion passes. Thank you, board. Thank you, administration, Superintendent Grant. Thank you, parents, for being here. We will now move on to the superintendent's report.
Thank you, board. That was a remarkably hard vote with tremendous consequences. I would like to say before, as I did before, that I realize that the impact of this decision falls on a select community within the district. But this affects the whole community, and it is the responsibility of the whole community. And with that, I know that our school principals are there and ready to make this about the whole community that is under their purview, and that their role, along with mine, which on my shoulders rests the responsibility of a transition and the further improvement of schools in our district. That with that, I want to extend the responsibility. I want to extend the responsibility to our teachers, in their classrooms, in their schools, to create new schools in what will be created in the fall. I want to extend the responsibility to our community members, to families and parents, to create new communities in schools with boundary changes. I have said many times that this is our city, this is our district, and these are all of our children. And with that, the responsibility is that all of us attend to those changes and those needs, to inclusion, to welcoming, to making the transition as smooth as is possible. So that responsibility rests on me. It rests on the leadership at the district, it rests at the leadership of the schools, and it rests with the teachers in our classrooms, as well as with the community that surrounds our schools. Education is a community affair. It cannot be done by the district alone. And with the board vote, I ask for your support going forward on this. I also want to say a thanks for the support that's been offered tonight. It is humbling. It is humbling. To be in the position of driving around a school district where every child you save becomes your responsibility. To do right by them is a lot to carry, but it also is a lot to look forward to in what we can do. I want to thank you as a board for the partnership in that. I also want to let you know that there are some great things happening in our district. If I may, turn to some of those things quickly and shift off this conversation for just a moment. I want to let you know that East High is holding a civic fair on Friday and invite you along. The government and citizenship classes facilitated by our teachers Matt Dimmick and Hayden Godfrey are presenting civic projects with their students, and their topics include teen mental health, homelessness, the environment, city growth, and other community issues, and these are things that we are excited to have students lead on. 2 PE teachers in our district have received awards for the quality of their work. Lucas Tucker has been named the Fox 13 Dream Team Surprise recipient for his work as a physical education teacher. Thank you. Joe Vignoga from West High School also was honored and selected as the most valuable educator by the Utah Jazz. I also want you to know that our very own James Yapias, who is the head of our Salt Lake Education Foundation and District Development, will be honored this Monday at the NAACP Martin Luther King Jr. Luncheon as the Martin Luther King Award winner for this year. This is a big deal, and I think it represents all of the work that James has committed to the district over his years there, and I'm excited to attend on Monday and celebrate him. 2 more things. Our early childhood educators have started letters training. So early childhood, the younger kids, they're doing the letters training around reading and reading preparation to move our district forward. This, to me, I know you know this because this is one of the board goals around reading. This letter training is going to make a difference, and I'm excited to see our younger students get a foundation in literacy. And finally, the district-wide gifted and talented testing is happening in our kindergarten and 3rd grade classrooms. Families do not have to sign up for that. That happens as part of the program in schools, and so that's happening in the next months, and certainly this supports our district's strategic plan for student success. Thank you.
Move on to board member reports, if any.
I may quickly. First of all, I really want to thank my colleagues here for bringing our own differences and being able to come to a decision. And the amazing thing is that, we are one engine, we may need little things fixed here and there, but our goal is always to move this vehicle forward. A message here to the parents who may seem to be extremely frustrated. I beg of you that you maintain a civility. I beg of you that we're all public servants here. We are putting time to make sure everything that's done is done to the best of the ability. And also, feel free to reach out to me if you feel you want to vent. I'm available, okay? And so please, please, I beg of you, if you are listening, watching, whatever you may be doing right now, please, everyone that I know here and everyone that I worked with in the district, the only thing that they have in their heart is students. And that's why they are and we are in these jobs here. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Bay. Board Member Sika?
No, I'm just grateful to Dr. Grant and her committee for all the effort, work, hours that you put effortlessly throughout the year to come to this process, come to this conclusion. I as well, this made me sick to my stomach. However, I cannot help but see my children all the time in my head. And when I say children, as a Polynesian, that's every child I meet in the Salt Lake City district. People are surprised when I yell at their children when I'm coaching because they're my children. I will yell at them the same way that I yell at my kids, and that's how I am. So when I think of my children, I think of every child in this district. That may sound unbelievable, but it's true. And I'm grateful to be an advocate to move and progress our kids in the Salt Lake City School District to the highest learning that we can provide possible. And so thank you to my community for electing me to have this opportunity to do so and advocate for us, but also at the same time, thank you to these members in the district. I know that our relationships through the rumor mill are said to say that we don't have a good relationship with the district and the administration, but I feel that we're building something and we're finally working. Ever since I've got into this position, this is the first time I feel that we're working. And so I'm grateful to each and every one of you, teachers, educators, janitors, everybody who is part of this district, who has made the effort to move this forward. I am grateful to you, and that's all I got.
Board Member Slack?
Thank you so much. I think that I just want to echo a couple of things that Jenny said. Superintendent Grant, I think that it's been an exciting time, since July, since you stepped into the leadership role in our district. And I can see a change with our employees, with your cabinet. Within the district, there's a different energy, and that's exciting, to see that, because that's something that we've been missing. I think that the people that are here tonight that I'm friends with, that I've known for years, that have supported me and have supported my efforts as a board member, that doesn't change. They will continue to always be that, because, as we move our district forward, that's one of the things that's the most important thing, is to work as a team. And because of that, it's the training that we receive as board members. And just this past weekend, all of us had the opportunity to go to Utah School Boards Association training. And it was just a feast of professional development that we all received, through those trainings. And for me personally, even as long as I've been on the board, I always learn something new. I just do. And the camaraderie, that you feel with your colleagues across the state, it just doesn't get any better, than being able to do that. I think that one of the things I would heed to my colleagues, and that is important for our community to know, that when we go to those professional developments, that we share with each other the things that we've learned, and that we bring that back to our superintendent and to our business administrator, and we have thoughtful conversations about some of those new and innovative things that other districts are doing. But the other part of it, too, is that we're learning about our roles and responsibilities as a board member. And it's important. We're in an election year. You know, there's new people that have signed up, you know, to run in my spot. You know, there'll be somebody new sitting here in January of 2025. And it's going to be your responsibility to take their hand and to help them, you know, as they move through, whoever that might be, to learn those roles and responsibilities to the best of their ability. The last thing that I want to say is I just, I'm so grateful for how thoughtful our schools are and the things that they do to involve our families. And I'm just going to give you a personal insight. You know, you all know that my granddaughter is over at Nibley. And, you know, one of the things that she was most excited about before she left was the sing-along that they did at their school. And I said to her, what was your favorite thing? And she says, we just talked about every single religion, and we talked about every single color of kid, and we just sang songs to just celebrate everybody. Isn't that a great message? That's exactly what she came away with for the Christmas holidays, and I just really appreciated that message that she shared with our family.
Thank you, Board Member Sweat, and thank you for your brilliant remarks as well at the conference this weekend, too. Board Member Jensen?
Yes, I just wanted to acknowledge, and I think that it's important for the public to hear this, that the Salt Lake City School District was recognized in that USBA conference for having every member master board certified. And I think that that shows that there is a desire that we understand our responsibilities and how to perform our roles most effectively. And I appreciate the way that we are working with one another and endeavoring to be the best that we can be as a board member. And thank you for doing that. It's been a learning experience for me to be on that board as well, and I appreciate the insights you have shared, Christy. I also want to remind you that we're shortly going to be moving into the legislative season, and there will be joint legislative committee meetings, JLCs, that I would certainly encourage you to attend. They're every Friday during the legislative session. Maybe along with that, I would just have you put on your calendar that Legislative Day on the Hill is February 8th and the 22nd, and will be assigned a certain day based on our district. And I'll share that with you in the next board meeting. Finally, I do want to say, I think that it's really important now as we move forward that we really do remember this transition part and recognize that those elementary schools that all of the elementary schools are impacted, but there are elementary schools out there with boundary changes and that are incorporating either special programs or new students that are anxious. And I mean, I was at a community council meeting a month ago at Indian Hills, and they're trying to do everything that they can do to ensure that as this special program, gifted program, is moved to Indian Hills, that they're doing it in a way that will accommodate the needs of all of the students. And I just want to make sure that we give each of those schools the support that they need and the direction that they need, and consider what programs we need to be implementing. I think that it was Councilwoman Sarah Young who, that was her thought, that as if this was the decision that we came to, that we were anxiously engaged in ensuring that we had the appropriate transition models and programs in place to accommodate the students and the schools that are affected.
I do actually have one that I forgot. I was going to say that elementary schools obviously have taken up a lot, of our energy and time, and that is rightly so. But sometimes then I'm remiss in remembering to announce things that happen at the secondary level, which serves a lot of students. And I don't know, I think I've shared this before, that the federal financial aid form, the FAFSA, Utah is among the lowest completers in the nation of that form, which restricts so many students from getting funding they need for higher education. And the FAFSA has a new form, which is allegedly easier, but the rollout has not been good if you're following the FAFSA rollout. But West High, tomorrow night in the library from 2 to 6 p.m. has a financial aid night, which I believe is run by the counseling department, where they can help students make sure that they have a FAFSA ID, talk about some of those things that are wrong, and just really encouraging all of our graduating seniors, regardless of what their plans may be, whether they want to go to college, they're on the fence, whatever it is, that this is a way to get free money to go to school, especially Pell Grants, which have been expanded for middle-income students as well as low-income students. So please make sure secondary students, specifically high school seniors, to do that. And then also Bryant has an open house, I think the following day on January 11th, and you can check Bryant's social media for details on that. But it will begin to be that season as open enrollment happens, where especially our middle and high schools start to share some of the specialty programs that they have on offer, and I encourage people to check those out. So tomorrow, 2 to 6 p.m. in the library, financial aid support night. Please do your FAFSA and get some free money to go to college if you want.
If I could just double up on that, students are leaving money on the table that could be used to support them in secondary education. West High School is running a pilot program starting right now in their next financial literacy courses to help students move forward on doing that so we can raise the rate of students on that. I want to tell you more about it, but I just wanted to double down on the importance of FAFSA. If you, even just completing the FAFSA form increases the likelihood that students will go to college because they all of a sudden realize it might be affordable.
Vice President Williams?
Nothing at this time.
I'll go ahead and take some time as well, and actually prepared remarks in the event that the outcome of the vote is what we just participated in. So I'll go ahead and read those now. 5 years ago this week, I took an oath that I would discharge the duties of my office, serving the residents of Salt Lake City on the school board with fidelity. Serving a public office is easy when the work is easy. Celebrating our student accomplishments and recognizing our outstanding professional teachers who work from sunup to sundown, along with their administrators, they provide the best possible education they can. Those might not be the easy parts, but they are the easy parts for us to talk about as a board and to celebrate and to support. I am proud of what our students and teachers have accomplished in the 5 years that I've served. Finding success among students and teachers and staff is not a tricky thing to do here in Salt Lake City School District. I want to reiterate that nobody on this board stepped forward to serve with the intent of closing down schools. As a board, the decision rested in our hands with the guidance and the expertise of the district, and today we voted to close elementary schools. Regardless how each of us as a school board voted, I can assure you that no one school board member took this responsibility lightly. With today's vote, our school district is moving in a new direction. Our school district will operate more efficiently and more equitably across the city, and that's my belief. The school board has limited control and input on what our city does to attract and support families, but for the families who choose to call Salt Lake City home, our district is committed to providing your children with the very best opportunity for an education available in the state of Utah. Each member of our district, from our superintendent to our crossing guards, each member of our district is committed to safety, well-being, and educational excellence and equity for each of our 19,000 plus students. Today's vote will cause stress, grief, and sadness for several families in our district. I want you to know that throughout this process, all of us were aware of the gravity of what we were discussing. In my discussions with other board members, whether we agreed or not, I hope to assure you they also read every comment and heard every position that was shared with them with the seriousness that this decision demanded. I know that there are many families, parents, and most importantly, students who are disappointed with the results. I empathize with you. I never wanted to do this. But along with each of my fellow board members, I took an oath to discharge those duties of my office with fidelity. For me, this is a difficult thing to do, but it was the necessary thing to do. And that was what our board has voted to do today. As an elected representative to the Salt Lake City School District and as president of the board, Liz, I will hold you and the district to their promise, to your promise, that you will do everything in your power and that we will do everything in our power to mitigate this difficult transition ahead of us. I've received assurances from you, our superintendent, that our district will come through this difficult transition leaner and better equipped to provide more equitable opportunities to receive an excellent education for all students served by our district, regardless of zip code. In the coming years, we will have more challenging work to do. As we are faced with that work, I want to let you know that we will continue to serve you, the residents and students of Salt Lake City, with fidelity. I also want to thank our board. I want to thank the superintendent again, your team. I want to give a shout out to Jared and West High School for accommodating us this evening. It's always a pleasure to be here. And I also want to wish all of you a safe drive home. I understand it's quite snowy out there. So thank you again. I will call the meeting adjourned.
Not there. I'm staying in here for